What's up, y'all? We are here for our Saturday night secret sermon. This is our secret teaching, the secret teachings of Jesus episode of the week. Hope y'all are well. Come in, sit down. So yeah, we are delving into the Gnostic Gospels in this playlist. You can find the Secret Teachings of playlist if you go to my Secret Teachings of Jesus playlist. If you go to my channel, Light Love Magic, and you should subscribe while you're there. But yeah, there's a whole playlist of the Gospels we've done so far, and we are in the Nag Hammadi scriptures. These are from the codexes found in Nag Hammadi, Egypt. And so far, we have covered the Secret Book of James. That was our first one. And then we've been in the Gospel of Philip for quite some time, like over a year. The Secret Book of James was definitely more like story driven. There was some dialogue, I feel like, if I can remember correctly. The Gospel of Philip are these sort of like isolated portions of really cryptic and esoteric text. It's almost as if we found the writer's notebook, and this is like all the notes on their ideas, like, and it came out as these like almost like these passages to meditate on, and it's unclear whether or not they were intended to be fleshed out or if they were just these morsels of ideas, and to me they are so dense and complete as is. So anyway, that's a little bit of context around the Gospel of Philip itself. So basically what happens is, well, how this came about is that I just was like really curious about all of the, like the Lost Gospels, Dead Sea Scrolls, all of those things. And I just wanted to make a practice of reading it. And I didn't know when I would have time or when I would make it happen, and when I would have discipline to do it. And so I thought if I committed to making this a segment on the channel, we could all learn these together. And so it's become really most people's like favorite part of the week. And I would like to like create maybe some courses that go more in depth about some Bible studies. I don't know, what would you guys be interested in, that kind of thing? Let me know. All right. So the way that I do this is I come in from work usually on Saturday night, and I grab a passage that's standing out to me. And we're almost finished. We've got a few weeks left in the Gospel of Philip, and then we're going to be done. And I am kind of sad because I really like this book. And I've always kind of felt like, so I asked my higher being, or, you know, I put it out there one day in a prayer and a meditation, what are my guardian angels' names, or what are my spirit guides' names? Who's carrying me along? Who's caring for me? Who's with me all the time? And over time, I noticed that the name Philip just followed me everywhere, and it was always in my face, and it was always showing up. And there was another. So it was revealed to me that I have 3 angels. And so there was one in front of me and one to each side. And I was like, well, what are the other two's names? Because Philip was definitely the one in the middle. And the other two, I was like waiting to discover these names. And there was like, one day I was sitting out back and I was watching YouTube videos, like music videos on my phone. And I noticed that Paul Simon song came up, you can call me Betty, and call me Al. And I don't know why, but I looked down in the description box, and there was like all of these crazy weird synchronicities. And to me, I just like knew that my angels, the other two, were Al and Bet, and one was masculine, one was feminine. And then I never put it together until much later that they were like the Aleph Bet. And in Hebrew mysticism and mystic cosmology, the building blocks of the universe The universe are the alphabet, the letters of the Torah. They all have their own unique energy signature and fundamental function in place and as building blocks in the universe and in reality. And so I don't know, I just thought that was interesting. And then there's a practice where you can use the 72 names of God, which are basically combinations of all of the Hebrew letters. And that's what like the Israelites used and Moses used to part the Red Sea and to unlock miracles. It was like a tool God gave to the Israelites to like reveal like supernatural miracles and things. And so always thought that was interesting. But anyway, so Gospel of Philip, I've always felt this connection to Philip, the writer. Philip, it just made me always feel like extra, attached to this gospel. And I really like how deep and esoteric it is and how much prompts I get from it. So that brings me to, I will pick out a passage, whatever's standing out, and I will kind of start getting downloads. And so I just go ahead and start the camera, and that's when I start reading to you guys. So studying at midnight, there's several reasons why the sages and students of mysticism have studied late at night. For one, at midnight, the veil is very thin. And so we're at the threshold of the ending of one thing and the beginning of another. And so that is a sort of a time where you can sort of brush the spirit a little bit easier. Next is that during the waking hours, we're exposed to like everyone else's feelings and auras and thoughts and negativity and frustration and feelings and excitement and anxiety and all of those things. It's like this it's static in the air that our nervous system is aware of. And that also sort of acts as static in the broadcast system when we are sending our thoughts and our prayers like out into the ethers, right, to become made manifest. It's like they're getting blocked, like our energy, our flow, our alchemy is getting disrupted by all of the toxicity around us, right? So it's like free radicals in the atmosphere that start breaking things down. It's just like that with our, so as we connect at night, we don't have the interference of all of the other noise from all the other people around us. It's like the energies are more quiet and we have like a clean, clear connection. And have you ever noticed that like early in the morning? That's what people talk about who are morning people. They're like, oh, it's like nobody's awake. Everything is just so quiet and still. You might notice it if you've ever worked in, say, an enormous warehouse building and you don't realize until you're there late at night how in life you're close to people all the time. And when you have like physical distance from all the other human beings, you just feel so, I don't know, like your whole aura is there and it's like it's not being disrupted and it just feels very comfortable, like a cocoon or something. I don't know. Tell me if you know what I'm talking about, but there's something nice about it. You just like relax. But yeah, okay. So our portion this week builds on last week's portion. I'm not sure if it was intended, but they do go hand in hand. So I love that I remembered, because when I was reading through them one night a couple of weeks ago when we were doing these, I was like looking for one that stood out, and then it was like that one just hit me. And then this one, it just goes perfectly. And it's all lined up perfectly with the Gemini new moon energy for the month, as we are sort of leaving the past behind and awakening this new consciousness and becoming this new version of self and having all these like fresh excitement and new creativity and new ideas again, with this new mindset, this new perspective, and kind of like this kind of up-leveled self. It's like we're kind of launching the new self on the new timeline. Like finally, we've kind of gathered our wherewithal and now we're ready to co-create, right? But all of this has been as a result of our devotion over, probably the course of a lifetime, but really it's been really potent over the last few years, our devotion to removing the layers of what is not truly that higher self, that higher us, and removing the layers of negativity that keep us from being fully connected to that full wholeness, that presence, that connection with God all the time. So interestingly enough, last week we were just like in the zeitgeist, the weekly energy, the collective, we were all, becoming so much more crystal clear on our patterns and our triggers and our reflexive responses, and realizing for the first time how much more self-control that we have now that we've seen our stuff so clearly, brought out so clearly, and we've gotten enough practice to be looking for it and to realize, okay, how to allow it to sort of show itself without taking any action, without becoming reactive, so that we can identify that pattern coming up, that reflex, that that lower self, playing on our personality and coming through. And so we're pausing and we see it and we're like, no, I don't want to go into that pattern again. I don't want to be this. I don't want to get dragged down into this this cyclone, this quagmire, this drama. I am sovereign and choosing with free will now who I am, how I show up. And so this is really great. So last week's portion was called Hidden Parts. And it was about how what is not exposed is left to sort of fester. And if you really want to kill something like youth, you expose it. If you want to take its power away, you expose it. And so it's like when a root is exposed, it withers, kind of thing. And so we were talking about exposing our negativity and really letting it come out into the open so that we can see it fully and those patterns can wither, right? This week's portion is called The Root of Evil. And this is building on last week's portion. So I'm going to read this to y'all a couple of times and then we're going to unpack it. The root of evil. Let each of us also dig down after the root of evil within us and pull it out of our hearts from the root. It will be uprooted if we recognize it. But if we are ignorant of it, it takes root in us and produces fruit in our hearts. It dominates us. We are its slaves. And it takes us captive so that we do what we do not want. So that's okay. We are its slaves and it takes us captive so that we do what we do not want and do not do what we want. It is powerful because we do not recognize it. As long as it exists, it stays active. So this is why the counting of the Omer, even though it is 7 weeks of challenging times, this is why it's such a valuable, precious jewel of a time of year to have every year. Because the challenges and the triggers that happen during the Omer are loud enough and aggravating enough to show you things that normally go under the radar. You can't see them. They're too nuanced. They're too subtle. So when we can't recognize it, it continues to exist and it stays active. Okay, so let's read this again. Let each of us, okay, so the root of evil is the portion. Let each of us also dig down after the root of evil within us and pull it out of our hearts from the root. It will be uprooted if we recognize it. It will be uprooted if we recognize it. It will be uprooted if we recognize it. But if we are ignorant of it, it takes root in us and it produces fruit in our hearts. It dominates us. We are its slaves, and it takes us captive so that we do what we do not want and do not do what we want. It is powerful because we do not recognize it. As long as it exists, it stays active. I love this portion because it's so direct. And it's one of the few times that anything in the Gospel of Philip just kind of takes some wisdom and spills it out straightforward. You know, not a lot of heavy metaphor, not a lot of encoded language that really means 4 layers of something else. But this is really letting us know. This is talking about how many millions of like self-help books have tried to explain so many times about getting to the root of our subconscious patterns and our subconscious defense mechanisms and our subconscious motivators, right? It's the things that are unconscious. It's the things that are subconscious in us that mostly drive us to do what we do. Our subconscious is so powerful that it can almost attract things into our environment and lead us toward things. It steers us towards the synchronicities that we find ourselves in so many times. That's why putting amulets or like talismans around, I think that the way that they work is they just play a subtle and consistent suggestion to our subconscious to give that subconscious some direction and criteria and information to go on, right? So, the root of evil. Let each of us also dig down after the root of evil within us and pull it out from our hearts from the root. So many times, like, we don't see our own evil. We don't see our own prejudices. We don't see our own hate, our own judgment, our own disgust, our own criticism, our own laziness, our own avoidance. I mean, sometimes we do, but we don't want to look at it. We don't want to look right at it. We don't want to keep staring at it. We want to avoid it, right? We want to avoid our avoidance. So it really takes, and this is the way that the cosmic game is rigged, because the teacher will appear when the student is ready, is an adage in, I don't know what spiritual discipline it comes from, but it's so true because, and even it's like Jesus says, like, knock and the door is open, but like Jesus doesn't, like, the Christ doesn't come and like force itself on anyone. You have to go after and invite that in, because it's a process that you have to yield yourself to and attend to and surrender to and sacrifice to and continue to practice and choose and choose and choose and choose again. And it takes an effort, and you have to be proactive about it, and you have to be proactive about going in and looking at yourself and searching for and being willing to see your hostility right? Your covetousness, your jealousy, your evil eye, your evil tongue, your temper, your anger, your rage, your disappointment, your weakness, your fear, your anxiety, your insecurity. You've got to be willing to go in and look at that. And a lot of people don't want to. They just want to stay, going through the motions, keep it numb, keep it distracted, keep it surface level, but others feel compelled to go deep, to self-discover and to, pull it all up from the root and purge ourselves. And those are the alchemists out there. We were sent to earth. We always usually come around to talking about this during these episodes, but we were put here as human beings in this physical realm. And part of our function here is to take that darkness that was left over when, all that was good was separated and created the universe. It's like there was this darkness left over. And this darkness was made manifest, when during the fall of the mankind in the Garden of Good and Evil, And so when the fall of Adam happened, it's like we all took on the manifestation and the sin of Adam, but it manifested as that darkness finding form within our being. And so all of us, all the souls that are incarnate, bring this darkness left in the cosmos that perpetuates in anger and evil and destruction and chaos and fear, right? When we chose that, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, it presented pain, death, and suffering into the world. It introduced pain, death, and suffering and chaos into the world. Before that, it was complete harmony and unity and oneness and wholeness and health. And so now it's like the function of our soul is to come here and take our darkness and truly and deeply and fully transmute that and heal it and correct it, so that forever and evermore, that darkness that was perpetuated is now changed forever into light that is being revealed and will now be a domino effect of goodness and creation and sharing and love. So let each of us also dig down after the root of evil within us and pull it out of our hearts from the root. And because it festers there, what we don't see festers. And, when people have this desperation within them or this need for certain things, when things have a hold on them, right? The workaholic that has an addiction and a need for success and acclaim and recognition, right? What will that person do to get to the top? It's like they're vulnerable then for the opponent to come in and whisper and be like, you know what? And you become vulnerable to the influence of the opponent instead of the influence of the higher self. And so then you get dragged down into doing, wicked, evil deeds, and you wear your consciousness and your conscience wears away over time. And it takes root and it becomes just part of your moral fiber to not think twice about, taking certain actions, which is interesting too, because part of this week's theme, part of that new moon in Gemini was the twins, but it was this moment where we are walking into this new timeline and we are looking inside at our own twins within us, our higher nature, the one that is aligned with that divine plan and that is pulling us into our soul's truest, highest destiny of fulfillment. And then there's our lower nature, our carnal nature, our animal nature, our afraid, scarce, selfish, grasping, lusty, ferocious nature, and we're pulled between the two all the time. And so the more that we are needy for material validation and caught up in material concerns, the more hold and control the material world has on us, the more vulnerable we are to be servants and devotees of the material overlord, right? And be yanked and pulled into our lower, darker side, our lower, darker nature. And that can grow and fester into, malignancy and evil and corruption and wickedness. And, people become diabolical. I mean, like, what are you capable of if you are desperate for approval, right? From a group. That's how people get in those weird situations where they're like hazed in these social settings, right? It's just like you're vulnerable to doing things. Like if you're desperate for a certain status of wealth, it's like you might be tempted into like shady means of making your money or keeping your money and not paying, taxes, for instance, right? If you're obsessed with power and money and, wealth, then if you're a business person making a product, you might be vulnerable to, say, putting dangerous chemicals that are cheaper, right, but less healthy and cause illness and disease in your food instead of doing things the natural way, which costs more money. And you get a little bit less profit. But hey, what do I care? I have 14 yachts and I own 4 islands, right? And so this is how that evil takes root when we don't see it and we let something own us. Right? And we don't see that it owns us. We think we own it, but really that chain goes both ways, right? When you think that you've got that leash on something, right? Like that you own it, that you're it's like that is attached to both sides. So again, let each of us also dig down after the root of evil within us and pull it out of our hearts from the root, right? Like for instance, okay, things that, get out of control and the root takes, the evil takes root and it has effect. Like maybe like someone that has sex addiction or an addiction to like pornography or whatever, and they can't, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to get help, or they're too embarrassed, or they're too ashamed, or they're too addicted to want to let it go, right? And so then it starts to do all this damage, and then it can have like compounding effects and like damage their relationships and damage, maybe even, who knows, damage their career. Like look at the people who have, over the course of many decades, the famous people who have been caught in like those adult theaters exposing themselves and then have been ruined because of it, right? So those gaps, and we talked about this, I think, in last week's video, those gaps in our ego, those porous places, those, evil is always crouching at the door. Sin is always crouching at the door. Like it's always looking for like a little way in, right? And so, it's good to know your own vulnerabilities and where you have your weak spots, right? And the more that we see these things about ourselves, the stronger we become. The less we look the other way, and the more we see it happening, and we can say, you know what, no. And it's like we lose our stomach for that kind of blindness in ourselves, that avoidance. So let each of us also dig down after the root of evil within us and pull it out of our hearts from the root. It will be uprooted if we recognize it. It will be uprooted if we recognize it. So when you see your stuff coming up, whatever it is, right? If it's bitterness and anger towards someone, not wanting to forgive, maybe you're jealous of someone and they get under your skin. Maybe, it could be anything, right? We all know the myriad varieties of evil and wickedness. and darkness and our own BS, our own bullshit. So let each of us also dig down after the root of evil within us and pull it out from our hearts from the root. It will be uprooted if we recognize it. But if we are ignorant of it, it takes root in us and produces fruit in our hearts, and it dominates us. We are its slaves, and it takes us captive so that we do what we do not want, and we do not do what we want, right? So if you remain ignorant to the evil in your heart, if you remain ignorant to the weaknesses in your heart, if you remain ignorant to your vulnerabilities, then they will get a hold of you and eventually they will control you. It's like when people have addictions and they want to play around with like those really addictive drugs like heroin, right? And they want to fuck around and find out. And they get sucked into like an addiction that they can never escape, right? That is likened to the rest of these personality flaws that we have and needs and untended to reflexive instincts that are of our lower carnal nature. Anger, hostility, right? When we don't see it, it starts to dominate. I mean, so this demographic right now of these extreme right-winged Trump supporters, many of them are rural men who may be dissatisfied with their current station and situation, which they have every right to be, because we all are. I mean, the economy has not been very good for us. Like the billionaires like driving things and throwing things off of balance. Like all of us working people have been the ones to pay for it. But okay, so there's like all these psychological books that are part of like a marketing education. And I remember one book, I can't remember which one it was, but it was talking about how like you can pretty much sell anybody on anything or get anybody to like join your cause. Like how to be compelling with others is to show empathy to their struggle and suffering. So you show them that you understand better than anyone. And you agree and validate their pain. And then once you've gotten them, like you're on the team with them, you now team up against a common enemy or a common problem. And then you give them an empowering tool or solution to tackle that problem. And it gives them a sense of control. And so this is like a psychological trap and pattern and trigger that marketing people or politicians, you know, any person in a powerful situation, whether they be a billionaire person trying to get you to buy their product or a person in a position of influence trying to get you to go along with their idea, you know, get you on to a movement. You tell someone, oh, I see your pain. I empathize with your pain and your pain is valid. And I am going to weaponize your anger and your need and your vulnerability, and I am going to point that in the direction of my agenda. And my agenda just so happens to be someone that I can easily let you feel like you can dominate over and point to and blame for all your problems. It's really easy if we just blame shift and make the whole thing into a one big clean package where we take all of our problems and we project it onto an easy, defenseless target. And then we empower and weaponize these angry, confused, vulnerable, manipulated people into being our pawns, taking our action for us, doing whatever we want. Because the more that we validate them and then throw them a bone every once in a while to earn their trust, like exposing something or validating their belief in conspiracies and things, they won't even see that like we are the horrors. They're going to love it. Because they know how to tap in to that carnal animal mind and manipulate it and trigger into response, reflex, fear, anger. When you are controlled by your animalistic nature, then you can be controlled very, very easily. People who are afraid and confused, they want to be given a little plan. They want to be told what to do because they want to feel a sense of like stability and control. And that is an illusion, but that's why people start to like, jump in on a bandwagon, complying, like jumping in, it's like people are easily handled if their animal instincts can be activated. It will be uprooted if we recognize it, but if we are ignorant of it, it takes root in us and produces fruit in our hearts. Now, what fruit is being produced right now? So much hatred. So much hatred. And for what? And for why? Like the people who hate these groups, these particular targeted groups of people right now have never been personally affected by any of them. But they've been sold this idea and they are on a bandwagon. And it has taken root and it is producing fruit in their heart that now these people have prejudices and true deep hatred, violence, hatred, and destructive hatred and aggressive hatred against people who never did anything to them. Because they let evil take root in their heart without any due cause. Just evil taking root. And if it's not seen, it remains active. And it dominates us. We are its slaves. And it takes us captive so that we do what we do not want. And we don't do what we do want. Now, in a collective sense, this to me is like people being scared and intimidated into more and more reliance on AI until they're groomed to the point to be so anxious about everything that they are ready to take the chip. And they're going to be like, well, if I ever got for security, if I got kidnapped, if I got lost, or it can detect any illness, or it can blah, 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 blah. Like, it's like it can detect it can make sure that all my levels are right. Like, it's already, people are blowing into the Lumi. Like, when in the history of mankind have we ever had to be so on top of our vital signs? Like, are you breathing? Are you like get some water, like go do some exercise, like eat, like come on, we're so overly obsessed like with this. We've just been sold it like we need it. We do not need it. And so, yeah, this is how it happens, right? When people can pull your strings and get you scared and I need control, to the degree that you will sell your soul to take a chip that is going to regulate all your hormones. You won't even be able to feel anymore. And you'll probably have to buy like that one Black Mirror episode that everybody keeps talking about. I haven't seen it, but from what I gather, it's like she has to get a computer chip to like overcome this like illness, and then like she has to buy like time that's like ad free, and like time where she's like actually consciousness, and it becomes like a subscription, like tiered subscription service. Like it's like a nightmare, right? But yeah, people, when they're so afraid, it takes root in them. It dominates them. It controls them. Their whole life is like driven by this fear. It's like people who are obsessed with health, food, and wellness and cleanses, and their whole life revolves around their fast, their cleanse, their, what are they eating? What are they not eating? You know what I mean? Like some people have to, but like other people don't. They're just obsessed over it, and it controls their every moment. We are its slaves, and it takes us captive so that we do not do what we want, and we do what we don't want. And it's like, okay, so that on a personal level, it's just like, how many times are we so close to getting what we really want, and then we self-sabotage? How many times do we get some extra money in the bank and then we immediately spend it? How many times do we get to our goal weight and then we're like, oh, I can afford to eat what I want for a minute and then gain that weight back, right? How many times do we ignore the red flags and get into that relationship with a person who we're too attracted to walk away from, even though they're not going to take it anywhere, and they're like a bad, they're like red flag central, right? And they don't treat us the way we deserve, and they're not committed, and they're flaky, right? And we end up wasting our time with these people. How many times, and so it's like these things dominate us, and we're slaves to it, and we end up doing what we don't want and not doing what we do want. And so how many times do we procrastinate what we do want? Like, classic example, writers. I'm like this totally. I love writing. I love writing. And like, what, you as a writer, you're like, oh my God, I'd rather do anything than sit and write at this moment. It's like the procrastination is so strong. It's like, why don't we want to just, like, can we just get over this, and just do the thing? I was doing so, I've never been super consistent with To Be Magnetic, not like I should be. But even doing what I have, I'm like, would it be better to just, instead of doing hours of workshops and like writing pages of journal entries about why am I avoiding my creative process, and like, instead of just doing my creative process, and then like actually just like, instead of doing all that, like use that time to just do the creative, like just get to work. Do I need to do all this if I can just make myself? It's mostly about getting myself to just do the work. Get on a better routine, do the freaking task, you need to do, instead of avoiding that task. Just take action. Be a grounded person that takes action. And so, yeah, it's like, how many times do we do what we don't want to do? I said I wasn't going to do this again. I wasn't going to lose my temper. I wasn't going to do evil tongue at work. I wasn't going to compare what I have to what others have. I wasn't going to get jealous. I wasn't going to get envious. I wasn't going to do this. I wasn't going to talk about that. I wasn't going to gossip. Like, you know what I mean? And you're like, I did it again. And it's working against you. One of the Kabbalah teachers, I can't remember who it was the other day, might have been on the weekly energy boost. They're talking about it. And they're like, if we had like an instant side effect for the evil tongue that we did, like if we said something bad about somebody and then immediately had like an ailment that came over us, and it was like so fast, and it happened like again and again and again, where we were like, oh my God, that actually causes that. Like, we would not talk bad about people, because we would realize that it is so risky and it has backlash. But instead, there's a gap in time of when that karma comes back. The opponent has it that way on purpose, so we don't see that they're related, and so we keep doing the bad things, right? So we don't take it seriously enough, or we're too forgetful. So if we saw, and there's like this concept called being under direct supervision of the creator. it's like when people become righteous people and they start becoming seekers of like spiritual change and transformation and becoming closer to the Creator, and they're like pursuing Torah knowledge and all that, they start to become righteous people, and they're revealing more of their soul, and that soul has more power, and it affects those scales over there more in a more extreme way. And so your darkness has a greater effect and your light has a greater effect. You are more impactful. And so it's a bigger deal to keep you in a higher state of vibration and consciousness, because you're having a positive effect on all of mankind. And the more like difficulty and negativity you overcome, the more light you're revealing. So you're actually making a difference. So when you do a negative thing, it takes away from your light, or your negative action has more impact in a bad way. And so when you become this kind of person, you're under what's called direct supervision under the Creator. And when you do a bad, you do have a very quick backlash from the ruler, like slap with a ruler, like, because God does not want you to go down a road of chaos and calamity when you build up your negativity for a long time and all of a sudden you have to go through a very negative, chaotic process. It's like, no, we need you continuing on your good momentum, right? So God does you a favor and God slaps you awake with a little, boo-boo, a little chaos that like will get your attention quicker, and it's like immediate, rather than you building up a big tab of cosmic payback, and then you have to be caught up in some chaotic process, and then you're not pushing the scale in a positive direction at that point. So you're starting to become more impactful and more kind of an important key player in the cosmos when you are actually doing that spiritual work and you devote yourself to that righteous path, and then you do something that is negative, and you will immediately like notice that you've got like a little I don't know, like something from the universe shows up, and it's like, you shouldn't have done that, kind of thing. So it's not a punishment, but it's a loving disciplinary correction for your own good, like the loving martial arts master, right? Rather than the wicked school marm. Okay, let's read this one more time. Let each of us also dig down after the root of evil within us and pull it out of our hearts from the root. It will be uprooted if we recognize it. But if we are ignorant of it, it takes root in us and produces fruit in our hearts. It dominates us. We are its slaves, and it takes us captive so that we do what we do not want, and we don't do what we do want. It is powerful because we do not recognize it. As long as it exists, it stays active. So these things, the root, there are evil, they have power because we don't recognize them. But once we recognize it, once we wake up to it, we're like, oh, okay, this doesn't have power over me anymore. Or at least you begin the process of untangling the power that it does have. But I mean, just think about any corruption, any perversion of anything. It starts with this evil that goes untended to, and it grows roots and it bears fruit in the heart, and then it causes more evil deeds and evil deeds and evil deeds, and it hardens the heart and darkens the heart and twists it and corrupts it. So let each of us let each of us also dig down after the root of evil within us and pull it out of our hearts from the root. It will be uprooted if we recognize it. But if we are ignorant of it, it takes root in us and produces fruit in our hearts. It dominates us. We are its slaves, and it takes us captive so that we do what we do not want and do not do what we want. It is powerful because we do not recognize it. As long as it exists, It stays active. So it gets us to do things that take us off our path. It gets us to do things that aren't in our higher nature, that aren't our true self, that aren't true to us. It gets us to do things that take us off of our higher destiny, of our higher path. And it gets us to avoid doing things that would be our higher destiny, our higher path, right? It gets us to avoid doing things that would reveal that higher self and that greater potential. All right, y'all, the root of evil. I thought that was a really cool and interesting and powerful, very clear passage if it's compared to some of the other ones we've had in Philip. All right, y'all. Well, I will see y'all tomorrow for our weekly energy oracle forecast. Until then, peace. Peace on earth.